Perfect. Thanks, Nick. And just a quick reminder, this section is directed at those young professionals who are attending convention for the first time. So you're more than happy to remain on NACMA Vets. I know we saw some of you on the list. We'd love to have any insight from your experiences as well. However, if you want to jump off, you are more than welcome to. We'd love to have you. But again, this session hopefully is featured for those young professionals who are attending convention for the first time. So again, welcome to NACMA May session. I'm Nicole Jones. I work at the University of Florida. So it's good to see everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Howdy, everyone. Good to see y'all. I'm Chris. I work at the University of Colorado. Nicole and I will be kind of co-hosting tonight. So as a reminder, it's Convention 101, right? So for most of you, this is probably your first convention or second. So hopefully some good tips here on how to prep for when we're all in Orlando in a couple of weeks. Tonight, we're joined by Brad Worthman, Head of External Operations at Virginia Tech, and Nikki Berry, Assistant AD of Marketing at Missouri. Brad is a veteran and has been to multiple conventions. Nikki attended her first convention last year, so we're going to get both sides of the coin as far as a veteran's opinion and someone who went for the first time last year to try to give everyone a complete picture on what to expect at convention. Brad, Nikki, do you guys want to say a little bit more about yourselves, then we'll get rolling?
Brad, you want me to kick it off? I am Nikki Berry. I am at the University of Missouri. I've been here about 2 years. I did not grow up in Missouri, but I've loved living here. So I went to school at Alabama and then joined the marketing team here at Mizzou, and have been here and loved it ever since.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad. I will defer all questions to Nikki tonight. I work at Virginia Tech as the head of external there, and have been at Cincinnati previously, and the University of Illinois as well. So, and they were very kind, both Nicole and Chris were very kind to say veteran. That just means I'm old and I've been there a few times. So I might have some either things to do or not to do, quite honestly, but I can try to help shed some light on. So excited about it. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So we're going to start the discussion. Again, please throw any questions in the chat. We'd love to hear from you on the call, what you'd like to hear. So we're going to start first with Nikki and kind of prepping for Orlando, topic number one. So can you kind of go into how do you spend like the weeks prior to NACMA preparing for convention?
Yeah, I'm a pretty organized person and I was a little bit nervous. Obviously, it was my first convention and I didn't really know what to expect. I went with some team members from Mizzou, but no one within the marketing department. So I was kind of shipped off on my own. And so I went through what like the itineraries or agendas online were and kind of picked out what I thought best fit what I was looking for. I actually put everything into my calendar so that way I knew my Outlook would ring on my phone. So I was like, all right, at 8 a.m. I have this, at 9 o'clock I have this. It helped keeping track of rooms more than anything. So I was like, all right, I know I need to get to this place at this time. So I spent the week of pretty much prepping in that manner. I asked a lot of questions of those who had gone before, texted some of my mentors and just what to expect, what to bring with. But the biggest thing I would say is just like look at the schedule ahead of time. And I think with convention, you kind of want to be flexible with how things go. You might have a plan in your head of what you want to do, but I think you should be always ready to pivot. You might want to go to one session and then figure out you want to go somewhere else. But I think being prepared and knowing what to expect from those sessions was the biggest thing that helped me, because I was like, all right, if I don't know anything else, I know I'm going to hit these things. I know my phone is going to tell me where to go. And so I felt prepared, even though I was like, I don't know what to expect.
Awesome. Brad, what about you? What do you do kind of preparing, or when you were as a YP going, what would you suggest?
Yeah, when I was young. Honestly, what Nikki said makes a ton of sense, right? And I know there's a few questions, at least in the prep work, that we'll get into in terms of how do you decide what sessions to go to and whatnot. But a lot of it just comes down to like, there's no one answer, right? So whatever works for you from a scheduling perspective is important. Something Nikki mentioned that is really important is flexibility. So build in some time, because, and the folks at NACMA and the committees work really hard to put together programming. And our hope is that it is successful and important for everybody, right? And it certainly doesn't mean that everything works for everyone, but when it comes to prepping for it, it isn't too like drastically different than your day to day. You know, like know what you want to do, know what you hope to accomplish. One thing, and again, we'll get into some of like the do's and do nots. Don't try to meet everybody. Now, especially like it's hard. Like I say this with our team all the time. Anytime we have people who go to a conference for the first time, try to meet 3 people and come back with 3 ideas, right? Because that makes it manageable. Like that's 1 a day, right? That's not overwhelming. But when it comes to the prep work for it, again, it really is. It's just put the things that you need to be at for your own professional development and growth in your calendar, and then build in some time to, especially if you're new, right? Like you're going to have some people who you probably only know on social or through NACMA Academy or whatnot. So find some time to connect with them and build that in, because it will go really quick.
Yes, thank you so much. I think those are both great tips, and I do agree it is very overwhelming. So hopefully this time will help you kind of not feel as overwhelmed. So kind of rolling into Nikki, anything you would suggest that YPs or first-time attendees bring with them to convention?
I would definitely bring a notebook and a pen at least. I wrote down, I wanted to soak everything in, and as we've kind of touched on, it can be overwhelming your first time, and that's okay. Like, I just want to say it's okay. We've all felt it. We all are nervous. I think I'm going into year 2, and even I'm still like getting those butterflies. You might get overwhelmed by the information being thrown at you. So writing it down really helped me. So that way I could go back, the end of the day, even a few days later, and really look over what was said. Took notes of people who were speaking in case I wanted to like reach out to them about something. So I think for me, I brought a bag and I had water and I had a notebook and a pen. You're talking a lot, so you're going to want some water. I think that's another thing. There's areas you can get that stuff, but I always just had a water bottle with me. I had a notebook and a pen and was able to take notes, take information down. And kind of those were my 3 necessities, I would say.
Awesome. Yes, water is very important. I do agree with that. What about you, Brad? Anything you would suggest or anything you bring with you that might be helpful for these folks?
Yeah, the easy one, right? Like it's free to smile, and sometimes people forget that. But I like bring a positive attitude. Nobody wants to be around like a buzzkill, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. What it hopefully means is that you're there for a reason, right? And everybody's there for similar reasons. It might be, for somebody it might be, hey, I'm in the market and I'm looking for an opportunity. For somebody it's, hey, I just got an opportunity and I'm going to learn something new that I can put towards my role. So when it really boils down to like, what do you bring and how do you get ready? Obviously, Nikki wins the planning of the 2 of us right now, is what I've learned. But be prepared. Like, you never know when you'll run into somebody that you would like to meet or that you would hopefully meet at some point. And maybe you end up sitting in a session beside them. Don't be the person who doesn't have a way to get in touch. And obviously it's different nowadays, right? Again, old. There was a time where we had to hand out a business card and hey, please. Now it's, hey, just send me a text and we're good to go, right? So it just depends on the situation. But when it really boils down to what do you bring, it's a positive attitude. Sometimes is so forgotten in all of the prep and all of the concern for how do I get to A to B to C, that sometimes it's the simple things that people forget.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Nikki. So moving on, I think one of the big stressors for a lot of people, and I know it was for mine going into the first one, is what do you wear while you're there? I think people get a little iffy on the dress code, knowing that all of our departments have very different professional dress codes at work. So Brad, to get us started from, just the male perspective, right? What are your tips and advice on the dress code of convention?
It's a great question. And I laughed when I saw it in the prep work, Chris, that you sent me. Because if you don't have somebody tell you about this, you don't know, right? And one thing, and when it comes to prep, to Nicole's point and to Nikki's point, it can be a little bit stressful. And the thing that I would use is the lobby bar as the prime example. For those of you who have not been to Orlando, to this NACMA convention at the World Center Marriott, there's one main bar and congregating area. And it sounds like, when you see me there, please come and tell me if I was correct or not. It sounds like a beehive at all hours of the day. It's just buzzing the whole time. So don't be overwhelmed by that. Just go and find a friendly face, right? And then go. So when it comes to what to wear, like I said, I'm really glad that we're talking about it. It depends on your personality, right? Like, but it also, it's for many of you, it's your first chance at a first impression. So don't necessarily be the person, and I'll use this as an example. I was at the Paciolan conference in February, and my luggage was lost on the way out. And so instead of doing the responsible thing that was, hey, I'm going to go and buy clothes for tomorrow, myself and a friend of mine went to Disneyland. And I thought, okay, if all else goes to hell, I'm going to be the guy who shows up in one of the giant Disneyland shirts across the back. And that's my backup plan. I wouldn't recommend that. What I would say is it's never a bad idea to overdress, which doesn't mean you need to go 3-piece suit, right? But I'm probably going to wear a blazer. And some of that is depending on your role and the conversations you'll be in. And are you having meetings with friends and peers, or are you having meetings that are work related? So I don't think you can never go wrong with saying, hey, I'm going to wear the school colors and logos. But I don't think there was a time where the answer would have been, hey, you can wear a polo and khakis all day, every day. And that's totally fine if that's the choice, right? Totally fine. But I think it does depend, like, wear one day that's your go-to outfit, like bring the showstopper and then bring it back up.
Awesome. Nikki, from the female perspective, can you comment on kind of the dress code and your advice for the group?
Yeah. From like the female perspective, I love a heel. I'm like big into the heels, but let me tell you, don't wear the heels. Wear a flat shoe. That's like my biggest thing. My AD loves a good sneaker, so I will probably try to rock my cutest sneakers, make her proud. But no, wear flat shoes. A cute sneaker is totally fine. I went in Vegas. It was very hot. It's Orlando. It's going to be hot. I will probably be in a dress, blazers. Oh my gosh, a dress, a blazer, and sneakers. And then have my pin. I would say, yeah, definitely try to stick within your school colors. Sometimes that's how people can pick you out of a crowd. Like Brad said, there's people everywhere. And so if you're, wearing your school colors, you're more likely to run into someone. But yeah, I think wear what makes you feel most comfortable. I'm comfortable in a dress. I'm comfortable in slacks, a blazer. I think whatever makes you feel the best, because again, like Brad said, you want to be comfortable, you want to smile, you want to be positive. If you're wearing something that you're going to be uncomfortable for 8 hours in, you're not going to be like the best self that you can be. And this is all about meeting people, like getting to know what other people are doing within the industry. And so I think being comfortable, but I think it's totally acceptable to wear slacks, to wear a blouse, to wear a dress and a blazer, wear sneakers. I will be wearing all of the above.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Again, please throw questions in the chat if you have any. We'd love to hear from you guys. We're going to kind of move on to topic 3. So now you're kind of dressed for the 9s, and now we're going to turn our attention to networking, which is kind of why we all try to go to convention, but it can be super stressful, super anxiety high. So Nikki, we'll start with you. Kind of, can you talk about your approach to good networking at convention and kind of how you meet and mingle and remember folks and kind of make that first impression?
So I chuckle because Brad mentioned like, oh, business card. I'm not personally a business card person. You're not going to see me probably being like, here's my business card. I totally understand it. I get it has all your information, but I'm definitely much more of like, I'm going to have a conversation with you and then be like, oh, it's great talking to you. Here's my number, connect with me, or let's connect on LinkedIn. There's even an app nowadays that is a business card. So you can basically put all your information on there and then it's a QR code and someone can scan it and then they have your information. But I think it's just being open to having conversations. So again, you were all in it for the first time. So I'm going to take a guess and say that you might only know people virtually, or you might not know that many people. And I think understanding that you're all in the same position, even Brad, who's a veteran, was like, come up to me, say hi. That's my experience is how a lot of people are. So if you have seen someone on Twitter or seen someone online, like, don't be afraid to go up and be like, hey, I like that thing that you said. Or I was big on the like riding up an escalator and being like, hey, how's your day going? Like starting a conversation. I think that's the best way to kind of network, is knowing we're all spending 8 hours in a convention hall, if not longer, all for the same reason, to learn, to meet new people, to educate ourselves. And so don't be afraid to just spark a conversation. I like your shoes. I'm from Mizzou. Where are you from? Like, just don't put more pressure on the situation than there needs to be.
So Brad, what about you? I mean, you've been in the game for a while now, so networking kind of is probably a little bit easier than folks that are YPs. So what's your approach to networking? Kind of how do you help ease into a conversation, and what advice would you have?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, right? And it's a hard thing to do well. And it's still, again, you notice, right? Central theme. Nicole called me old again. It's tough, even for somebody who's been at it a bunch of times, right? Because if I have to maintain what I've asked our team to do, which is 3 people, 3 ideas, then I can't just stick to people I know, right? The benefit of having gone for a while is that, and I can say this with the, we're recording it, and I would say it. Some of the folks that I've met through NACMA are some of my most important people that I've met through our business, right? And some of them are, it's funny, it starts as like, hey, you're colleagues and you have mutual respect or whatever it is, and then you become really, really good friends because you're going through the same things, right? And it's, Nicole and I have known each other for a while, and I'll use her as an example. Like if I need something or advice, I can call Nicole and she'll hopefully answer, right? And vice versa. So when it comes to networking, what Nikki said is important. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And remember that everybody else, and I preface this with the fact that as somebody who has to, and this will shock Nick, as somebody who has to work hard to try to be an extrovert, it can be an intimidating thing, right? And that's why you just try to break it down into digestible pieces. And other people are in the same boat, especially if you're new. And that's where I would say, like, reach out to somebody. Again, it's you don't, even if on this call, right? Let's say you don't know anybody on this call right now, and you don't know anybody who will be at convention. I can promise you that you know me and Nick and Nicole and Nikki and Chris, right? And so at the worst case scenario, you can come find one of us and say, hey, what's going on? How's your day? What session are you going to? So there's no shame in that. But when it really boils down to networking, a lot of it just comes down to just be yourself, right? There were all these tips and tricks and things you should do, and just be yourself. Like, don't overblow it. It's not that overwhelming. You don't need to come out with every AD's phone number, right? Because not every AD is going to hire you by the end of convention. Like, plot twist. So come out with some people, especially for first time. Get to know your peers and people. It sounds ridiculous, right? But get to know people that you'll be competing with for opportunities, who also will be, at some point you will be on the presenting end of this conversation, and you'll talk about, hey, I've got a friend in Nicole who I've known for 10 years and this is how we met. So.
Yeah, and I think, to add to Brad, definitely I lean on Brad a lot. And I think for me, the mutual respect, and it's funny looking back on my career, and it's crazy because I've been going to conventions since 2004. So yes, I'm old too, been doing this. I think I get as nervous as I was for day one at convention that I do for this convention. However, some of like my best friends are folks that I met in YP Network, and it's crazy to say I was the first group that went through YP and like young professionals group and all of that. And I still find to today that was one of the most valuable personal sessions I've ever done. But please know we're just as nervous as everybody else. I'm work very hard to be an extrovert as well. So it's exhausting, but I think like Brad said, please come up to us. It is very overwhelming, but I think it's overwhelming for all of us. So Chris, I think it's you.
All right, so we know what we're wearing. We know how we're gonna say hi to people and not be scared of everyone. So now we're gonna talk some strategy and really maximizing the week. So Brad, how do you kind of for yourself and also your staff, right? How do you plan out what sessions you're gonna go into? And then do you kind of coordinate with your team to get wide coverage, or do you say everyone go do what's gonna be most beneficial for yourself?
Yeah, so I've done it a few ways, and I'll give you some of there's some elements of, hey, this is what you could do. Doesn't mean you should, right? Like, do what works for you. It is, and before I answer it though, I will preface it with like, please throw some questions in the chat, y'all. Like let's make this thing a dialogue, right? Lord knows Nikki doesn't want to hear me talk. So when you think about sessions and the folks that you're going with, I thought it was interesting what Nikki said about last year, where she was the only person from her marketing team that's there, because that makes you, in some ways, like a one-person show, right? Like you've got to figure out what you go to, you've got to figure out what you bring back. Again, the 3x3 model. If you're meeting 3 people and learning 3 things, if you've got 4 people from a marketing office going, or 2 people, or whatever the number is, 50 people, you just the law of expanding returns, whatever the opposite of diminishing returns is. And so when you break out who can go to where, if you're going by yourself and you're the only person in that group, it certainly doesn't mean that, to Nikki's point, if you're going with somebody from your communication staff or somebody from your ticketing staff or somebody from your compliance staff, there might be some opportunity where maybe they've got a break and they can go cover a session for you, or they will go with you to a session. So don't think exclusively about NACMA. That's probably the one piece of advice that I got really early, was think about it from fundraising. Like, go talk to a member of your fundraising staff who's going, and find out what the best session is that they're going to, and go to it. But really, if you are going with more than, if you're going with just yourself, line it up based on what you want to learn about, who you want to interact with. Because there might be an opportunity, and pick on Chris and Nicole. If Chris and Nicole are giving a panel, immediately following the panel, there's like a 5-minute buffer to get to the next session. And there's 45 people that wait to talk to Chris and Nicole. And it's really hard for anybody to do it. And then Chris and Nicole, no matter what, feel bad about the fact that, well, hey, we didn't talk to Nikki and Brad. What you can do is, to Nikki's point, write something down that they shared. And later in the day, when you see them, go up and say, hey, you did a really great job. This is what I learned. So when you are able to break down the panels, and you're able to break down the schedule, if you're on solo, decide what is most beneficial for you. B, decide what is most beneficial for your institution, right? Like, what is something, if you are, as an example, if you're onboarding a new tech, and the tech provider is giving a panel or a session or a whatever, you might want to go to it, right? Because that's an immediately actionable thing that you'll learn and you can put into practice. But when you really, what I would recommend, easy trick, sit down with the people on your staff who are going to go. Like, the agenda is available now, right? So sit down, whether it's now or next week, or the week after. I guess we've got a few weeks left. Sit down and identify who wants what, who wants to go where, who wants to meet who, how do you want to do it, and then break it down. And then what we do on the back end is we typically have a roll call type meeting where we'll walk through and say, okay, Nikki, what did you learn? Nick, what did you learn? Nicole, what did you learn? And kind of work through it that way so that our department can hopefully improve.
Awesome. Real quick, I think jumping into something Brad said, when I first went, I thought you could only go to like NACMA sessions. There were going to be people like checking my badge if I tried to go into like something else. If you guys see like a NATSO or a NAT or an ICLA or a session that looks interesting, you guys can absolutely go to that. Even if you're not a member of that organization, it's obviously more geared towards something that's maybe not necessarily within the majority of your job scope, but Don't be afraid to branch out if you do see something that looks really interesting from our ticketing friends, our development friends. So, Nikki,
Chris, sorry, the only limitation I'll give to that before we have a bunch of folks walking in the trying to walk in the breakfast or lunch or something. If there's food and beverage associated with a session, it'll say, if it's NATSO per se, it'll say NATSO registrants only. So don't try to sneak in. We will catch you there. No, I'm just kidding. But any educational session that we have is open to everybody. And last year, again, with this year is still early on, but everybody's going to be under the same roof at the same time. So there's going to be development, ticketing, licensing, all the different associations are going to have sessions going congruently. So yeah, feel free to hop into any of those educational sessions to learn about anything.
Awesome. Nikki, so as a younger professional, right, what were some ones that for your first time last year were like really beneficial? And then if you went to the YP workshop, can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, so I think the YP workshop was really great because it was like one of the first things you did when like your first day. So I'm overwhelmed and I don't know anyone. Like I said, I walked in alone and then I randomly sat down at a table and we went through all of these different things, the group of us. And so I think it was a great like icebreaker because you're around a bunch of people who have either been there one time, it's their first time as well. So I think it was the perfect place for me to be like, I don't know what to expect. And I was also around a whole bunch of other people who felt the same way. So I think it was 10 out of 10 worth it. And I actually met people that first session that I then was like, oh, I'm going here. Do you want to come with? Or I would get coffee with them, get like lunch with them. So it was the perfect way for me to be like, I need a friend. Like I'm here alone and I just need someone. Or if I saw that person or a familiar face later on in one of the other sessions, it was great. So definitely recommend it. I honestly think that, and Brad kind of touched on, like when you go with multiple people, it definitely makes sense to not like crowd one session. I get the concept of like, oh, you are going with people, it's your first time. So yes, maybe 1 or 2 sessions, sit with someone else from your staff or whatever. But I had the luxury of choosing what I felt was best for me and for my department. And I honestly thought that they were all super insightful on like what I could learn. One of the things that I guess I'll recommend when you're in sessions is like ask questions or like make note of what other people are saying and then connect with them later on. I get nervous in certain situations. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an introvert. I do love to chat, but in big group settings where I think people are super, super smart and obviously know the area of marketing, I tend to get a little bit nervous. So I told myself, like, make your voice heard at least once, whether you ask a question, whether you comment on a question being asked. And so I think that helped me in the sessions even take in even more, because I felt like whether someone is listening or not, I'm at least participating and making it worth my while. So that's something I did that really helped me in those sessions, especially because I was like, my first time going. So.
All right, we're gonna
really quick, if I may. What Nikki said there again, because Chris, you know, I can't be quiet all the time. What Nikki said there matters, and I hope that you all heard it. Like the YP stuff and the YP training on Monday might be the most important thing that you will go to, because the rest of it is crazy busy and you're running from room to room and you're trying to get in this session and then you're stopped in the hallway and you're having a conversation with somebody you met the other day or the other night. But the YP session is like a high intensity training, right? In that moment, it's 3 hours, it's three sessions. And it might be the most important thing that you attend as a first time attendee.
Real quick, we got a question in the chat. Brad, I'm hoping you might be able to help answer this one a little bit. If you're not staying at the host hotel, how do you still try to get that full experience after sessions end? Or I guess anyone, Nicole, Nikki, if you were in the main or not last year?
So I'll give it an opinion, and then hopefully somebody else can either confirm or deny. I think a lot of it just depends on, to get the most out of it, just be prepared to spend the day. You know, it's 3 days, like, and there are those of us who probably need to sleep at some point, right? And then there are those of us who need to charge hard. And if you're on the call, it's probably because you need to get cruising on it. And so I've been at the main hotel, I've been at the host hotel, I've been at the non-host hotel, I've been at the overflow hotels. I've been 1 year we rented a villa because it was plot twist. It was cheaper than getting 4 individual rooms, and it had 4 rooms. So a lot of it just comes down to, can you make the most of the time that you have there? And you do that by having those conversations and those connections. And like, I think what you've heard from all of us, right, is it's exhausting. By the time the week is over, you don't have a voice. You've talked nonstop. You're sick of hearing yourself speak. All you want to do is probably go sit somewhere, but don't do it on Monday night, right? Like, do that on Wednesday night when you get back. So.
I was at the hotel, but some of the other members that I was with from my department were not. And I think just like Brad said, you kind of have to, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So just think about it as like, it's, it's exciting. It's a lot of energy, but then you have a come down at the end of the day. I think just be prepared, but also don't feel like if you have to run back to your hotel, that's okay. Like you need to, take a break. You need to go and do something. That's 100% acceptable. I think, yes, having the understanding of, all right, I'm going to try to be there like a work day. I'm going to try to go 8 to 5, and then go back, sit for an hour and a half, and then go out to dinner with a group of people. That's totally fine. But if you're like, it's, it's noon and you're like, I've just had a really long morning, I want to go back to the hotel. I might be a little late to the afternoon session, but I'm just going to run back. I'm going to take a break for a few minutes and then come back. That's all right as well. I think it's just like planning like it's a full day and then figuring out and navigating how you feel throughout. Again, water is a big thing.
I'll just add in as well, especially as I see this last question come in about is it better to get a rental car or use Uber to get around? Just so everyone is aware, wherever you're staying, if it's one of our properties that we have on our website, there will be ground transportation provided, and that'll run continuously. So we'll have buses going. I don't know that we have the finalized agenda, but they'll be going every 15-20 minutes from your hotel over to the main hotel. So keep that in mind when you're looking to get around. I'm not sure exactly how late that will go till. I know our exhibit hall is open until 8 p.m. on Monday and Tuesday nights, so it will go definitely past that. I can't say if you're trying to get home after the lobby bar at midnight or 2 a.m. that the buses will still be running. But for like Nikki said, if you want to run back to your hotel in the middle of the day and then come back over to the main hotel, that's perfectly fine. And there'll be buses going continuously. And most of the people who are going to be at a convention are not staying in the host hotel. So you won't be alone on those bus rides. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. And hopefully that'll save you money and whatnot, the hassle of getting a rental car and getting Ubers everywhere.
And I can say on Nick's thing is I would recommend Ubers, not rental cars. Just living outside Orlando, parking, like if you're going to go down, some people go down to like Disney Springs and other places, parking is a nightmare. I'll tell you that. So I would suggest an Uber if you're at a hotel where you can get the shuttle in and day out. Anything else, Nikki, Brad, to add to Ubers, rental cars? So in the chat as well. So I'm excited. Thanks for putting all these in the chat. It's exciting. So I know we touched briefly on business cards. I think Nikki said there's QR code, which is kind of cool. Maybe we can go into details about that. Brad, back in the day with you and I, we'd throw them out all over the place. So the question is, should we have business cards? If so, do we pass them out like candy or just swap when people offer theirs? So I'll start with you, Brad, and then maybe Nikki with the cool QR code.
Yeah. I think it depends on the person, right? Like I was never one who was like, hey, I'm bringing 100 business cards and I'm handing them out a day. Again, if that's your vibe, great. What Nikki said in the beginning, I think is really, really powerful. meet people and make connections, right? Don't make contacts, because connections are people who are going to help you and who are going to go to bat for you and who are going to answer the phone when you call. Contacts are great, right? Like we all have however many we have in our phone, and that's wonderful. But think about how many people you call. Think about the way that I've always viewed it. Think about the feeling you get when somebody that you actually genuinely like calls, right? Versus somebody who is exclusively asking for something. It's different. So I think there's an element to there's an art. It's certainly not a science, right? Again, it's an art. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. Just because it wouldn't be my vibe does not mean it's wrong. But it's certainly up to you and however you want to play it. I would just focus on, again, that's why I harp with our group on the 3x3. It's not because there's no science to that, right? I literally said, well, we're there for 3 days, so make 3 friends. Very deep, right? But that's what I would recommend is play it by ear, see how it goes. You know, there's not a tally at the end of the week that says how many contacts did you make and how many business cards did you collect. But there might be a tally at 6 months from now if you say, hey, I spent 15 minutes with Nicole and Florida has an amazing opportunity open, and now I can reach out to Nicole without saying, hey, I've never met you, and I can speak back to a conversation that you've had with her instead of just, hey, I met you at convention for 1 minute and I had your card.
I second everything Brad said. I think if it feels right, business cards are great. And I think it does have all the information. But again, I think you're go into convention like, I want to meet 3 friends or I want to form genuine connections. If you're like, sometimes the business card feels a little bit forced. So just like feel out the situation. And if you're vibing with someone and you don't necessarily, if your phone's charging or you don't want to share contact information on your phone or find them on LinkedIn, I think it's totally acceptable to be like, here's my business card, or do you have a business card, versus maybe giving yours, maybe ask for someone else's. Like I said, business cards aren't necessarily my jam, but that doesn't mean that that's not someone else's. And I think that's totally all right. Hi Hello is the app I was talking about. So it's basically a virtual business card, and I'll like try to show you mine, but basically it has all of your contact information here and you can share it. You can either send it to people or you can share via scanning a QR code. So it's just another way to connect with people that way. And you don't need a physical business card. So you're not passing them out, you're just scanning. I've used it at a different convention and it was great. And I was able to, connect with people and have them on there. So.
Awesome. We're going to kind of dig into some advice now. So we've kind of gone through the prep, dress, all of that fun stuff, networking. So just advice. And I'm going to start with Brad. What is 1 or 2 pieces of advice you would share with this group?
Yeah. So the easy one that comes to mind, don't make the moment bigger than it is, right? It's a group of people with similar intentions. That's it. And it doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter who it is that you're speaking with. They all took a plane or a car or an Uber to get there. That's it. So sometimes it's a little bit, and I remember feeling this way. It can be a little intimidating, right? Because you're sitting wherever, whether it's in the lobby or in the hallway or at lunch, and there's a table of 6 Power 5 ADs, right? And sometimes what's cool is that you figure out like there are normal people in our business, right? They're not all they got there through the same ways that we will get there, right? Or we will choose separate paths or different paths or whatever. But what's fascinating is just be open to having the conversation with people, right? So from an advice standpoint, don't make the moment bigger than it is. And then also make a point to learn something, right? And that it's not, I'm not going to go on my 3x3 rant, I promise. but it is make a point to get better. Like either you are paying for it, or your institution is paying for it, or your boss went to bat to try to get you there, or your boss's boss said, hey, we need to make a hard decision, and Nicole is going to get to go and Brad is not going to get to go. So you're there for a reason, and somebody, whether that's yourself or somebody else, said that you need to go to this convention and you need to grow and you need to, which means that somebody cared enough to pay attention to the fact that they think you have potential, right? So I think the easy thing to forget is some level of gratitude in it, right? And again, it's why I start with like, don't forget to pack the positive vibes. Which again, there's going to be so many things that you will hopefully learn, and the sessions, and I'm incredibly biased as somebody who has seen, through work on the NACMA board, like I've seen the sessions kind of come to life, and I've seen people work towards it. And I'm really excited about a lot of the programming. Like there's a lot of things that if you play it right, you will take back, and a lot of people that you'll be really impressed and inspired by. So don't be afraid to go to the panel and to listen to the panel.
What about you, Nikki? What advice would you share?
I think it's really, really important to just be yourself. And we've kind of touched on it, but Brad said it, like you are all going for a reason, and everyone has a different reason, but we're all there because we have similar interests, which is working in sports, and we all probably share a lot of the same struggles. And so I think just be yourself. Don't try to force things. And it goes back to what you wear and just everything. Like just be real to who you are, and convention will go great. It's been set up fantastic for all the things to honestly come naturally, especially attend the young professional workshop, and like that sets you up right away, and then just like go from there. So don't try to force and be like, oh, I'm this super hyper bubbly person, when really you're like naturally chill. That's okay. Or, if you are bubbly and you're really outgoing, don't try to like dull that because you think, oh, it's going to be too much if I'm walking up to everyone and trying to talk to them. I think just really be who you are and kind of rock with it throughout. And then again, don't be afraid to go up to someone. Brad said it as well, like we've all gone through the process, and we've all been in similar shoes at one point in our career or in our life. And so don't be afraid to be like, hi, and go up to someone and just introduce yourself and say whatever you want to say, and just kind of like, don't be too nervous to do that, because you'll probably end up regretting it if you don't, and you never know what's going to happen down the line and that connection that you make.
So one piece of advice that we really haven't, or one piece of programming we really haven't touched on, is the exhibit hall. And I think the exhibit hall is amazing. I love the exhibit hall, but there's so much coming at you at one time, and you're trying to balance eating. And then there's a bar with, alcohol, and then you're trying to talk to vendors, and vendors want to talk to you. And then you have friends and you're trying to make connections. So we're going to start, Brad, with you. What is your advice in the exhibit hall? Maybe give kind of a brief description of what it is for these folks, and kind of how do you tackle the exhibit hall and sort of kind of balance the eating, the drinking, the socializing with also getting information with all these vendors?
Yeah, it's not easy, right? And to Nicole's point, I also really enjoyed the exhibit hall. It's a really great way to interact with NACTA partners, which is great, right? Like they contribute sponsorships, and that helps offset cost of convention and the whole deal, and makes convention significantly cheaper than it would be without them. So, and people like Nick work really hard to make that happen. It's the first compliment I've ever given Nick. It'll be the last. So, but it's recorded, so Nick, you can play it back whenever you need it. I would say the exhibit hall, like a lobby bar, right? It can be a little bit much, because you walk in, and if you have not been to any kind of like exhibit hall in that space, there's, I don't know, 10 rows, 12 rows, 15 rows, and it's like a 10 by 10 tent there's like 100 of them in every row. So imagine whatever your respective, if you are at a football school, your family tailgate on game day, and multiplied by 1,000. Right. And every vendor there and every partner there, rightfully so, wants to have a conversation with you about your school or somebody, or they want to say, hey, Nikki, will you introduce me to Chris, or whatever it is. A few easy ways that I would navigate the exhibit hall. One, find some of your partners who you maybe have only worked with virtually, right? I became really good friends with Zach and Robert at Old Hat because we worked with them, but I had never met them years ago, and met them at convention for the first time. So I would find some partners that you maybe have done work with, or that your department does work with, right? It may not be that you are the primary point of contact for them, but maybe it's that, if you're at Florida and Nicole signed a deal with partner X, go up and introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm Brad, I work with Nicole. We really appreciate the work that you all do with us. So that's the first way that go. Second thing, if you, during the day, make plans to meet up with somebody there, all right, and walk around with them. And third, find people who are kind of like, I don't want to say engaged, but find people who are paying attention to some of it, right? And you don't need to hit every exhibit. You don't need to, you can't. But find a few that matter and make sure you spend some face time with partners and people who you really wanted to spend some time with.
Nikki, from first time or last year, kind of what was your plan and how did you attack it? And looking back, is there anything you would give advice-wise?
My mistake was not having a plan. So I learned a lot because you walk in and it's a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of booths. Brad kind of said it, but what I learned was that a lot of our partners or people we were planning to work with or like talking to were there. So my plan quickly became find the people who I've either emailed with, Zoomed with, who I know someone in my department has, and just interact with them. Either I've interacted with them via Zoom and I've kind of had conversation, I've emailed with them. So I was like, at least this is an in and I can be like, we've had a conversation. From there, I did take a walk around and just try to navigate what looked interesting to me. I mean, there's so many different things there and not everything is for everyone or every department, and that's totally okay. And so I think just navigate what is best for potentially the future of your department. I also think that you can have that conversation maybe before going. So talk to your department and say, all right, what are some things that we may be interested in implementing within the next year? Who should I necessarily look out for? And that'll help you. And that way you can kind of narrow down from the large list of people who are there and say, all right, we want to do X. So let me see if there's companies that'll be able to assist us with that. And then have a conversation and say, at Mizzou, we're looking to do this. So I was hoping to connect and just hear more about what your company offers. Take a business card, give a business card, and connect that way. So I think trying not to hit everything and make it a smaller scale thing. Not everything is going to be for you, and that's totally okay. I think it's totally fine to say hi and then find things that maybe fit more what the needs of your department are and kind of develop those connections and relationships there.
Nicole, I'll just mention,
yep,
sorry, go ahead. Since you'd mentioned balancing the talking to the exhibitors and food and drinks. So the exhibit hall hours are Monday and Tuesday from 5 to 8 p.m. and then also Tuesday from noon to 2 p.m. And during those times, as Nicole mentioned, well, the evening sessions, there's alcohol, and then there is food at all of the sessions, so all three. So it's intended to give you, if not a full dinner, definitely some appetizers to hold you over until you do get to dinner. And then there will be lunch provided on Tuesday afternoon as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Last piece of general advice is, this has stuck with me ever since I was a GA and I was getting ready to go to my first one. Our assistant AD looked us all dead in the eye and he said, don't be first team all lobby bar, which is don't get after it too hard at the lobby bar in the evenings. Absolutely, like have a good time while you're there, meet people, but remember that you are all representing your institutions, that logo on your polo, that pin on your blazer, whatever it is. So don't be first team all lobby bar is my other kind of quotable, memorable, simple piece of advice.
That cannot be like understated, overstated, whatever. That cannot be said enough, right? Like I'm so glad, Chris, and I'm so glad that you said it. Because that's not, again, when I said, hey, like you need to be a hard charger, what I meant was go to the sessions and get to know people. It doesn't mean party till 4 a.m. Right. And again, if you're going to, that's fine. Don't do it in the lobby bar. But like be responsible. And again, you are there hopefully because your institution paid for you to be there. So you do owe it to them to do it the right way. And if not, like word travels fast, right? And that's the hard part. So that's the unspoken truth that people won't talk about.
I was just going to say, I second, third, all of that. I think just remember that even if you are out with friends, you never know where you're going to run into those people down the line or who they know. And so you might be like, oh, I'm comfortable, but just be mindful, like we are all there for convention. And so, yes, it's great to connect with people, even your friends, but just, you never know who's going to maybe make a call one day and then they'll be like, oh, that one time at convention. So again, just be super mindful.
All right, guys, last question for everyone. So Brad, Nikki, we'll start with you. When you get back from convention, what are you doing to download with your team or just to kind of organize all of the notes you said you took while you were there? What is that first day back in the office or that first week back in the office like afterwards?
Yeah, so Brad keeps talking about us 3-3, but we do a 1-3-1 here. So it's one genuine connection. It's 3 things you learned, and then it's one thing that you would like to try and implement within the next year. And so when I get back, I kind of debrief I look back on my notes. I might reorganize them. Sometimes it's a lot of information being thrown. So just trying to like read through, really take in what I learned. I also look at maybe the business cards of the people that I connected with and try and just shoot them, the week after, like, hey, it was great to meet you, like, have a great summer. Or if you connected with, maybe someone at the exhibit hall reaching out and saying, hey, met you, would love to connect on X, Y, and Z, and trying to set those things up. I think just trying to like get yourself together because there is a lot of information, you're going to meet a lot of people, and just trying to like get everything straight. And then again, we do our 1-3-1. So we regroup as a team on the back end and talk about the people we met, the things we learned, and what we want to implement for the department as a whole.
Brad, same question for you.
The 1-3-1 is pretty cool. I like that a lot. I might steal that one. But it also, I meant what I said, right? Like we'll sit down and have some dialogue amongst the group. And now, before I would have done that with our marketing team, right? Like our core group who was there, our marketing and sales team. Now in my current role, I'll have our whole external group participate in this. Because my hope is that somebody in our marketing office hears something and learns something about fundraising, right? Like let's learn the new trend in fundraising, or vice versa, that somebody in our facilities department learns something about the ticket sales industry, or that the ticket sales industry learns something about facilities, right? And why doing all the things we want to do are not the easiest things in the world. So it really is. It's kind of like, I guess the easy analogy is it's kind of like reading a book and you get inspired by it, right? Like you read the book and you're like, this is amazing. Like, how did I never read this book before? And then 2 days later, if you didn't do anything with the information you learned, then it was a waste of time reading it. So the ability to talk through it after the fact, again, and it doesn't have to just be your department, right? It could be set up a call with somebody that you meet when you're there. It could be set up a call with somebody who you've known previously, who you reconnected with at convention, and say, hey, I'd love to learn about what you got. Or set up a Zoom. I know they're lame now, but 3 years ago, they were the rage, right? Set up a Zoom happy hour with a bunch of colleagues from different schools and say, okay, let's talk it through. Maybe you're the only one from your department who went there, right? Like in Nikki's case, last year, I bet it would have been really helpful to have somebody else from marketing there for her to bounce ideas off. But what she could have done was bounce ideas off and she may have her colleagues that were in marketing from other schools. So I think sometimes it's forgotten that like, hey, on Wednesday, it's getaway day and everybody's gone. And then that's where it stops. And it doesn't have to be, right? Like convention doesn't have to be, and the learning doesn't have to be 3 days a year.
Awesome. All right, Brad, Nikki, thank you guys for taking the time tonight. We really appreciate it. For everyone who's on the call, we hope you guys got a couple good notes, and we will see everyone in Orlando in a couple weeks. Nicole and I will be working on a survey just on how the NACMA Academy went this year. So if you attended one, if you attended multiple sessions, be on the lookout for a short 5-minute thing, just so Nicole and I can figure out how to help set the stage for this for next year. But again, Brad, Nikki, thank you very much. Like everyone said, you guys see us in Orlando, come say hi, come introduce yourselves. We'd love to meet you guys in person and not on screen for once. So safe travels to everyone who's going. And yeah, thank you all for a good night.